What's going on, everyone? It's Al from Exiles, and today I am bringing you a deck I never thought I'd actually be doing on the channel, but it's a deck that has quite recently really taken me back. Now, as we all know, lockdown happened last year, and this was a deck I just decided to pick up and test and play. You know, it's just in my spare time at home, a bit of solitaire, this and that, as we all do, and it really grew on me. Now, at that point, I didn't really feel, the need or the want to really play the deck. But after returning to locals, having a few play arounds, having a good time, yeah, this deck's really good. And with the release of Engage on the new ban list, I've yet to actually try this deck with Engage. But after testing online and feeling pretty good about what I've been working with, I've decided to give you guys a deck profile about Sky Striker today. A deck which, I never played at its full power, or I never, because I'm a budget player, I never would have been able to afford a deck like Sky Striker when it was full power. So this is the closest I'm going to get to reliving that experience that other people may have had in the past. Anyway, let's stop waffling on and let's get into my deck profile. I'll explain my choices as we go along and they'll make a bit more sense to you. So let's start off with the standard triple copies of Ray. Well, 3 copies of Ray, of course. It can dodge your opponent's targeting removal and stuff. It can be chained, bounce itself off the field into another Sky Striker Link monster. It can bring itself back from the graveyard if a Sky Striker Link monster leaves the field. Fantastic card. Searchable off of Engage and Rotor. You don't want to go without 3 of this. Now, a lot of people have been playing 2 rows. Unfortunately, I only own the 1. I would definitely bump it up to 2 if I had the second copy. But I find that 2 copies of rows have been working very decently for me. Just the 1 copy of Rose, has been working really well for me. And that's it for the archetypal monster lineup. Let's go on to the disruption. I've got 3 copies of Lancia for our destroying our opponent's banished strategies. 2 copies of Meister, 2 copies of Bell, 2 copies of Book of Moon. I have more disruption in the deck, but you can interchange any of these. You can run more Meisters, more Bells. You can swap things out for Ashes, but this is just what I've been working with. I haven't swapped anything else out, but I'd probably exchange the Moons for Ash and another copy of another form of disruption in the deck, maybe for a 3rd copy of the Ash. But again, side decks, the majority of your disruption, which is like 12 to 15 cards in the deck, off the Sky Striker cards are already disruption, like Widow Anchor and things like that. You're already running so many of them, so you shouldn't run into any problems. I've gone into a more consistency focused build, so I have played around with cards like Card of Demise and Duality before, but I never found that they really let the deck do what it intends to do anyway. Free Widow Anchor. We all know Widow Anchor negates a card, can steal it if you have more than 3 spells in the graveyard. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure everyone has heard everyone waffle about around Sky Striker. 2 Shark Cannon, a card I've always wanted to put up to 3, and I've played it at 3 before. Never encountered any problems with it at 3, but I'm trying it at 2. 2 feels pretty good, so that's where we're at. 2 Afterburners. This card helps you crack boards incredibly. If you have Engage, you search this, you add it back to the hand with Kagari, you can crack boards really, really well, which is really good. 2 Area 0 along with the Terraforming. I used to play 3 when Engage was at 0, but now that we've got Engage, I think that we can play 2 pretty safely. Resolving Area 0 properly with Ray, it feels really good, as long as you don't whiff, which is never fun. Another good thing about Area 0 is that if it's sent to the graveyard, you can summon a Sky Striker monster from your deck, which is pretty awesome. And the Return of Engage, it is a non-once per turn complete archetypal search that can draw you an extra card if you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard. Pretty busted, but I think this card is a lot more counterable now that people are teching in things like Ghost Spell to negate the Kagari, because it can add from graveyard back to hand. If your opponent's main decking DD Crow, they can banish the Engage when your opponent decides to target off the Kagari, meaning that once that Engage is banished, you don't really have a way of returning it. This is why people don't really get engaged back with multi-roll, because once you've used it with multi-roll, you're banishing the engage, and it's just like, well, here I am. I don't have engage anymore. I'm playing pre-ban list, and there were top cut like remote dual profiles of Sky Striker in the past year without engage. So yeah. Other one Hornet Drones, one Hercules base. I just like this for the recursion. You could probably run something like Avarice if you really want, but as well, I think that having a Sky Striker name that can just recycle your stuff is really cool, as well as it being a target to send off of Area 0. Multi-roll, it's still at 1, pretty busted card. Lets you reset Sky Striker cards from your graveyard up to the number of ones you've activated this turn. Makes your Sky Striker card spell speed 4 if you resolve its first effect to send a card from your field to the graveyard. And yeah, the only drawback, of course, is that it banishes the cards you reset off of it, so you just need to be a bit careful when you're playing around with it. 1 copy of Eagle Booster. This is a card I've always advocated for more than 1 copy of, because if you're in a bind and your opponent's like, okay, I'm going access code, you can in that split second make your Sky Striker monster like unaffected, meaning that your opponent won't be able to get over it, especially if you can resolve the second effect, meaning it can't be destroyed by battle. You'll take a bit of damage, fair enough, but at the same time you will be thanking yourself for having this card in your deck, as well as the fact that if it's your turn and your opponent decides to, I don't know, negate your Kagari to add back the engage, you've got that in your hand. You can chain the Eagle Boosters, chain link 3, resolves backwards, makes the Kagari unaffected, and then you'll successfully be able to resolve your Kagari, just as everyone wants to. Jamming Waves. Unfortunately, I don't have this in a higher rarity. Whoop-de-doo. Another card, non-targeting destruction of monster if you can resolve its first effect and second effects. It can target a set spell or trap on the field and destroy it. And then its second effect will resolve if you have those 3 or more spell or traps spells in your graveyard, which is really good. The 1 Rotor, self-explanatory, searches Ray and Rose. 1 Called by the Grave. This is another card you could probably swap out along with the Book of Moons for Ashes. Again, personal preference, entirely up to you. The disruption and hand trap side of this deck is extremely versatile and interchangeable. You have so much to work with, especially on what you can use when the time calls for it. 3 of the best card in the game still. Yeah. I don't really know. Drawing the extra desires off of this card really sucks, but at the same time, it's what I'm doing. My last slightly controversial consistency engine is 2 Goods with Fusion. This is just really to get extra spell names in the graveyard, help you draw a card. It really sucks if this slot gets banished off of Desires, but again, if you want to scrap this and go with more disruption, you easily can interchange it. And last but not least, triple impermanence. Awesome, let's get onto the extra deck, which I'm sure the route you all know is going down. 3 Kagari, fantastic, gains 100 for each spell in your graveyard, and recycles a used Sky Striker spell or trap back to the hand. Pretty cool. Right. 3 Suzuki, adds a Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand with different name for the ones in your graveyard at the end phase, and debuffs your opponent's monsters by 100 for each spell in your graveyard. 3 Kayate, she can attack directly, as well as the fact that if she battles, you can dump a Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard. Really cool. 1 Kaina, comes up more than you think. So if you float into this off of Ray during your opponent's turn, you can stop a potentially massive monster your opponent controls from getting into you. So say you want to, say on res, your opponent goes access code talker, activates the effect to add. On resolution, you can chain your Ray, go into Kaina and make that access code talker be unable to attack. So that'll activate on a new chain, obviously. We have Zeke. I really like Zeke. It's a really good link too. It banishes a monster on the field until your opponent's next end phase on summon, and it gains 1,000 permanent attack by you the effect where you can just send one of your own cards. So I don't know, you can float off a area 0, summon something else, get more materials to go into your one of Link monsters of Unicorn, Phoenix. We can go Avramax, again, really cool. You can go float into Unicorn. If you have the Ray or something on the field, you can go into, or a Link monster, you can go into Avramax. This is my current out for Dragoon. I've played around with cards like Ningirsu, I've played around with cards like Borreload, but I have found that Avramax works pretty well. You can go Boral Sword, but I don't really like it. Because everyone's sort of going the access code talker route, you know, it's Power Crep, Boral Sword, Dragon. But again, like I said, I'm a budget player. I like to experiment with cheaper options before having to resort to a more expensive one. And finally, wrapping off the last, we have a classic Topological Veiner. Occasionally, as a Sky Striker player, you find yourself in control matchups, and those can end up a grindy slog, and it just isn't fun. So having a card like Trisbane in your extra deck that you could potentially trigger whenever you like is really cool, especially if you have it in the extra monster zone. You go Shark Cannon to special summon one of your opponent's monsters to its zone, and then you can just banish their back row should they have any. But yeah, guys, I'm sorry if this deck profile has any issues with it. Again, I have been playing around with Sky Striker for a while. I'm not an expert on the deck by any stretch of the imagination. I never played it when it was meta or tier 1, but this is what I've worked with. I hope you have enjoyed the deck profile. I love to play this deck. I'm going to have a new and updated Salamangreat profile coming up for you guys soon, as well as a take on ABC I've been working on, a more sort of budget ABC variant that I've been having fun with. But yeah, this has been Al from Big-Al-YGO, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.